Chapter 3. Max, whose sense of humor was every bit as dry as his father's, so dry that his classmates, misconstruing his jokes, chided him for being too serious, liked to describe himself as an only child of an only parent. He never knew his mother, though oddly enough he felt he understood her. Perhaps too well. Besides looking alike with the same wavy hair and bony, almost Asian facial structure, they formed an oddball dynamic duo, the poster child and poster adult for weirdos everywhere. His mother had been a maverick anthropologist specializing in cryptozoology, a fancy word for the study of mysterious, officially unacknowledged creatures such as the Yeti, Chupacabra, and Loch Ness Monster. As a scientist studying animals other scientists held to be, at best, figments of the collective imagination, at worst hoaxes, Dr. Cynthia Holden Diver, despite winning a number of prestigious academic awards, including 2 Fulbrights, had known firsthand what it was to be an outcast, ridiculed and marginalized by her peers. Never mind that, as a tireless explorer and field researcher, she had produced an impressive body of evidence for the existence of hominid cryptids, aka Bigfoot, including dozens of eyewitness accounts, enormous footprint casts the size of snowshoes, and fur samples with unknown DNA. The evidence never seemed to matter to those in power, who had already made up their minds and did what people typically do when their worldview is threatened by new data. They attacked the messenger. When he was 10 years old, Max gave in to curiosity about his mother by sneaking a peek at her personal effects, which his father kept in a scuffed, sewered travel trunk beneath his bed. Inside, he found her throwback, horn-rimmed reading glasses, a chestnut-colored suede satchel, binoculars, a gold and onyx hairpin patterned after an Egyptian scarab, a red alpaca wool scarf, a broken compass, knee-high safari boots worn to almost nothing at the heels, and a torn blue rain poncho that smelled of grease and mud. It was strange and unsettling to think that a whole life, his own mother's at that, could boil down to half-forgotten oddments molding away in the darkness of a hidden chest. The most intriguing item Max discovered was a leather-bound book, which turned out to be his mother's field journal containing a veritable bestiary of pencil illustrations of strange creatures, in addition to many pages of notes of a complex scientific nature in her feverish handwriting. At first glance, the handwriting sent shivers down Max's spine. It looked virtually identical to his own hurried, barely legible script, which usually earned him a C for neatness, or lack thereof, on his report cards, his lowest grade by far. Max never intended to be messy with his writing, which he could read just fine, years later if necessary, even if his teachers couldn't. He merely found that his active mind tended to move too fast for his hand to keep up with. Obviously, his mother faced a similar dilemma. Inside the journal's front cover, as a kind of private epigraph and guiding philosophy, she had penned a quote from the renowned psychologist Carl Jung: "I shall not commit the fashionable stupidity of regarding everything I cannot explain as a fraud." Though Max loved and respected his father more than anyone else alive, in most ways he more closely identified with his mother. His father was the proverbial insider, a folk hero, a golden boy who could do no wrong, whereas mother and son were quintessential outsiders, quirky individuals with eccentric notions and substandard handwriting. Max wondered if she too, as a child, had trouble coloring inside the lines. He always visualized her as a slightly irreverent young woman fresh out of Yale graduate school, as she appeared in the framed photograph that graced the mantelpiece of the Diver family, such as it was now, home on Tupelo Street. In the photo over which Max sometimes caught his father in the melancholy act of reminiscing, his parents were captured arm in arm, smiling and in love, next to Captain Diver's red and blue Cessna Skyhawk parked on the sun-drenched tarmac of nearby Cape Carnival jetport. His mother looked like a cover girl with her olive tan, white teeth, hazelnut eyes, and lustrous auburn hair. Only her slightly raised nose gave away something a little left of center in her character. Some inherent rebelliousness, a sassy gene that made her go her own way, even if it meant flying against the flock. 12 years her senior, his father was tall, robust, and in the prime of his life and career, with the barest hint of gray in the tips of his cropped brown hair. He looked like a statue of a Roman emperor with his square chin and noble bearing. Fittingly, the Skyhawk was called the Tempus Fugit, Latin for time flies. According to Max's Aunt Nadine, whom he sometimes questioned whenever she babysat in matters regarding his mother, rather than burden his father with memories that could only depress him, the photo had been taken around the time of their engagement. The two had met barely 6 months earlier, while flying no less. When not hunting for Bigfoot, his mother was an avid amateur pilot who owned and flew her own rebuilt, as in by her Cessna 150J, christened, appropriately enough, the rare avis, Latin for strange bird. She had contacted his father via radio on sighting the Tempest Fugit off the southern coast of Florida one Sunday afternoon. They had exchanged words about a storm coming in from down around the Keys, and somehow, before their aerial chat ended, managed to make a date for dinner the next weekend. The rest was history. To say the two were made for each other would be an understatement. They seemed destined to meet, and fated to live together happily ever after. Had they known what the future held in store, Max couldn't help but ask himself, would they still have chosen to marry and have a child? Do the right thing. Experience the full audio video book today only at solluckmansubstack.com.